And we're live on YouTube, and we are live on Instagram, and we're a little bit early. Maybe skip forward 10, 15 seconds if you're listening to this. Hang on, we are telling more followers to join your video. And it's 11:45. Let's get rolling. So welcome to Martinis with Scott. We're just doing our midday touch base. Hi to whoever's on YouTube live stream. Please give a wave. Anything you want me to talk about today, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to touch on a couple of topics. Anyone? All right, let's move into, I'm going to talk about how to sell something. But before I do that, I did a show on the Martinis with Scott, the recorded YouTube channel, maybe, I don't know, 3 months ago or something, about Laurentian University. So a Canadian university that went into a CCAA, a Companies Creditors Arrangements Act, insolvency process. If you're from the US, that's very similar to a Chapter 11 insolvency. You go to a judge and you say, hey, I'm in financial trouble. I need to be restructured. I need to, get rid of some debt so that I can carry on business. You keep operating. You're running your business. In this case, your university during the time. I covered it as a story because I thought it was really interesting. I have personally sat on an advisory board of a business school in Canada, a significant business school. So I'm a little bit aware of the trials and tribulations, the financial hardships that management executives within universities, the financial challenges that they have to deal with. And so it was an interesting story. And it's the first time in Canada that I'm aware of that a university has actually filed for bankruptcy protection enabled in order to do a restructuring. And my proposition was, the problem with universities is that they have such a heavy fixed costs and strong union contracts with their professors in particular. Who all make decent money. They're all making, over six figures. I think the average, I looked it up before the show, the average in Canada of a professor's salary is about $102,000, somewhere in that range. More than double the average Canadian salary, right? Population-wide. But they don't make enough money on a global scale. And as a university, you're not allowed to pay them more. You're not allowed to attract high-end global talent. Well, it's not that you're not allowed to attract it. You can't afford to attract high-end global talent because you can't pay them. You can't pay them anywhere near what they're worth on what these professors and these teachers are worth on a global scale. And that's because of union contracts, because you have a very small, band of minimum pay to maximum pay within the contracts that have been negotiated over the years. And so what these union contracts do is they reduce the price of the labor, right? They put a cap on the price of the labor, and therefore you put a cap on the quality of the professor that you're able to attract. And look, we have wonderful professors in Canada, probably at Laurentian University, I don't know, but I'm assuming at Laurentian University as well. Why wouldn't I assume that? And so we've got some great people, but you're not able to compete, is my point, on professors on price. So what do universities do? Well, they start looking for public-private partnerships. Maybe we can help get this guy a house or this gal a house, or maybe we can get them some work on the side or whatever. You start coming up with creative ideas, not all of it legit, so you can't go through with it, but that's what you do on a board. You start thinking about, wow, what sort of different things can we do to attract and build our programs up? And so the only way to break through these sort of fixed costs and fixed contracts in Canadian law and US as well is through an insolvency process. And so Laurentian did that. They filed CCAA. They were out of money. They couldn't reduce their expenses, and there's no way to do that outside of getting help from the court. And so they filed CCAA. And the whole reason I did the show is because it was interesting, because it's within our space, but also because I think it's going to be a trend. I think it's going to be a real trend that as governments come back on the cut back on the public funding of universities, that if this works for Laurentian, you're going to look at a lot of universities across the country that are going to look to do the same thing. So that was a prior show, and I think a lot of people have asked me to do a follow-up show on that. I just haven't found anything interesting to talk about, hey, lessons from behind the wheel. Hope you're doing great today. And so I haven't done a follow-up show on Laurentian University and its insolvency because I haven't found anything interesting. But because it's Friday and because we like to have some fun, I was on Twitter today, and I did not know, if you're Canadian, maybe you can tell me if you know this. I did not know that we have a Marxist group here in Canada. You can go to marxist.ca, the Canadian arm of the International Marxist Tendency. Who the hell knew that was a thing? And so they did a tweet. They said, despite the efforts by some bourgeois media. Did you know that bourgeois is not a very well-defined term? I didn't know that. I thought it meant some sort of elite classist thing, when if you look it up, it could mean a middle class. It could mean middle class, is what you'll see on Wikipedia and in some definitions. Anyways, I'm just having a hard time believing the media is bourgeois. But anyways, despite efforts by some bourgeois media outlets to pin the blame for Laurentian's insolvency on financial mismanagement, the real culprit is a decades-long campaign of austerity and underfunding of public sector institutions. So in Canada, the government provides a lot of funds for the universities. Let's say the bulk of the funds for universities, and then of course they charge tuition, which makes up the balance. I don't know the split for you off the top of my head. The Marxists are saying, well, on their tweet, that hey, the government's not paying enough. So no surprise there. They would rather there be no tuition, that it all be free, and and that the Marxists aren't paying enough. So I clicked through the article, made my mistake on doing that, and I looked at this, and just to be quick about it, it says Laurentian has since decided, since they filed for bankruptcy, to axe 69 programs, many of which are French language programs. The programming cuts include the only French language midwifery program in the province. The only French language midwifery program. Does that need to be a university level deal? Could that not be done privately or in college? I'm not sure why that's a university program, but who am I to judge? They've also axed 100 faculty. So as I said, the heart of this is getting at the labor contracts, which you're locked into when you're at a university. And the only way to do that is through the insolvency courts. And when you do that, as the Marxists here correctly point out, that you get to avoid paying severance, pension, healthcare benefits towards former employees. Well, that's not entirely true, but it's significantly true. And so they put the lion's share of the blame on austerity from the government, which may be true. They've cut back. Certainly the governments have cut back. But where was this going to end? Like I said, you've got serious fixed contract issues within these types of businesses. And the only way to deal with that is with the help of an insolvency judge. So they say we need a mass input from the governments of cash. And it's becoming increasingly apparent that the capitalism model cannot provide these essential needs. We need to bring a socialist, we need to bring about a socialist society. And before that, they're talking about, really, this is about labor. So here's what I found funny about this, and I pushed back on, is here you got the Marxist protecting and going after, they're trying to help the worker. And in this case, the professors who are making well into six figures, who are making 2 to 3 times the average wage of a Canadian. And they're blaming the government for not supporting these, by Canadian standards, wealthy people. It just seems to me to be the opposite of the Marxist program, as I understand it. So I pushed back on Twitter for a little laugh, and then I got accused of being a wage stealer. No one knows what that means, but I'm being accused of being a wage stealer, and it said nobody cares what my opinion is. Fair enough. Let's talk. Oh my God, I talked about that way too long. Let's talk about selling things. I had a question from a listener. Will you comment on being positive in sales? The idea to some that one must never be negative in sales position. For example, I worked with a VP sales who mentioned he loved Thai food in the context of a work lunch. Later, I found out he was allergic to Thai food. He basically lied. Well, he didn't basically lie. He did lie. And he did so to appear to be positive. Yeah, maybe. Saw it with other sales people, even outside sales roles. In a social setting, one never admitted they hated seafood, even though it was clear from their action. I even called out the salesperson, why can't you just admit you hate seafood? To which they replied, well, There are varying degrees of like. That seems like very Bill Clinton-ish, right? It depends what the definition of is. Thereby refusing to be real and seeming negative is being positive, i.e. being genuine, the most effective trait in sales. Really interesting question. I'm all about truth. I talk to you all the time about the trust bank, about persuasion. Rule number 1 in persuasion is attention. Rule number 2 is trust. What is trust? Trust is pacing and leading. It's being truthful. It's an interesting question. If you don't have the trust, you can't persuade somebody to do something. Sales is persuasion. So it's funny, and I've thought a lot about this, and I have a hard time reconciling my own advice on this issue, because I can tell you a couple examples. There was one, I'm not going to give you the city, I'm not going to give the name of this person, but in a Canadian city, I was once hanging out and doing business with a significant wealthy individual who owned major league sports franchises, more than one. And hey, thanks for joining us over there at Lizard Creek Lodge. More than one sports franchise. And I went and I met this guy for the first time, and he was just the sleaziest, most lying, oozing of lies person I'd ever met in my life. And I went back to my office, and everybody was like, "What's he like? What's he like?" And I said that. And I said, "But you know what? He's so goddamn charming. I don't even know that I care. He's got such charisma. I don't even really care that I know he's lying to me as he's lying to me." And I'm like, I'm not even really stressed about that. And I used to hang out on Bay Street all the time, which is the Canadian Wall Street. That's where I grew up. And, you go drinking and you have broker friends and investment bankers, mostly the brokers, not the investment bankers. And they're just lies. They're just like everything that comes out of their mouth is a lie, and you know it. And what do you end up doing? You end up laughing. You end up just like, this is your buddy, and he lies to you all the time, no matter what. And it's like, so how do I reconcile that charisma and lies with my mantra of truth all the time? And I've told you before on this show that my career and life changed. It was going great. And then it went even better when I started becoming, relentless on the truth. And so here's something to think about. Here's a framework. First, what do you need to do to be successful at sales? Well, there's 3 things that you need. One is, and think of each one of these points on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay, so the first thing is your product idea or your concept. Is your product idea concept better than other product ideas concepts on a scale of 1 to 10? Like if you got an 8 out of 10 rather than a 2 out of 10, you got a better shot at closing that deal. So there's one framework, okay? And 1 out of 3. 2 is you yourself, the salesperson. Are you trusted? And do you connect with the person you're dealing with? So you personally, are you trusted and do you connect? And then the third one is the company, the organization that you represent. Is that organization trusted, and does it connect with the market, the person that you're trying to sell to? Think of each one of those 3. So your product, service, concept, you personally, and your company that you represent. Think of them on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of the connection with the market. And then you need to break each one of those down into 2. When I say the connections, you need to think of that in 2 fronts. So the product, live video. Sorry, I had a phone call coming in on Instagram, so you got paused for a minute there. So each one of these 3 frameworks, and I want you to think about 1 to 10. So then you think about logic versus emotional. So is your product idea concept, is it a 10 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 on a logical basis? And logical means that if you buy that car, you can now explain to your family members or your friends, you can explain to them, here's why I bought the car, the fuel economy, the safety, the performance, whatever. There's a logical, factual basis to that. And the emotional is non-factual, non-factual. It is the picture that is painted for you, the lifestyle, the prestige, like those things that resonate with you. And so there's both a logical and an emotional piece of this. So when you look at your product idea and concept and you're rating them out of 10, you got to think about both the logic behind it and the emotional piece that you're selling behind it. When you think about you and the trust and the connection that you have at a logical and conceptual, logical and emotional basis, and your organization. Okay, because that's what business brands are about, right? They're at the logical and their emotional level, the connection with their market, and so think about that. So it brings you 6 points, 6 paradigms to think about. 3 of them being the product, you and your company, and then logical and emotional within each one of those. How does that relate to a salesperson needing to be trustworthy or not? I think that you can. Here's what bottom line: if we just focus on the trust and the logic and the emotional scale, logic tells me these people are lying to me. I know for a fact they're lying to me. The emotional side tells me I don't care because they're fun to hang out with. We go for dinners and drinks and they make me feel good because they never say no, right? So I don't know that helped you. To that listener that asked that question, I think that's the psychological reason that these people can be successful salespeople, even though you know for a fact that they're telling you they like Thai food when they're allergic to Thai food. It's all about the charm and the charisma and the connection. You can be 8 out of 10. So you've got 6 scales now, right? You've got 8. You could be 8 out of 10 on 5 of them, and 2 out of 10 on the other. Still be successful. Still close deals. Think about it. Anybody have any? Went over time a little bit today. Anybody have any questions, comments, other things they want me to talk about? Did you enjoy your week? How are things over at Lizard Creek? How are things in New Jersey there? Lessons from behind the wheel. You're probably driving, so don't type to me. Hope everybody has a great weekend. We will see you next week. Same bat place, same bat channel. Going to sign off of Instagram first. Talk to you later, YouTube.